Hey everybody, welcome to the Grow Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Kevin McNulty, and this is your personal development school of growth, where each week my guests and I will bring and break down big ideas and practices that will help you learn, grow, and succeed in life. Thanks for checking us out. Now let the growth begin. Hey everybody, welcome to another inspiring episode of Grow Yourself, your personal development school of growth. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, well, I'm just going to say it. She's 103 years old. And what's interesting about that, though, it's not her age that is the highlight here. It is what she has done in that 103 years. I mean, literally, I am talking to a pioneer, a woman that has done so many great things for us in our world. And I recall this story, this story actually is kind of a poem called The Dash. And The Dash, it talks about this idea that it's not the beginning number or the end number that is on your gravestone, if you will. It's the dash in between those times. And so that's what we're going to be talking about to really an amazing guest that I have here. And so I have the extraordinary honor of introducing a pioneer in the work of holistic medicine. She has absolutely revolutionized healthcare and really impacted so many lives. And that is Dr. Gladys McGarey. She's known as the mother of holistic medicine. She has dedicated over 6 decades to transforming our understanding of health and wellness. And she was born on November 30th, 1920, in India. Dr. McGarey was immersed in the healing traditions from a very early age, thanks to her medical missionary parents. And then at age 16, she moved to the United States to pursue higher education and eventually entered the Women's Medical College in 1941, overcoming what we can all imagine was significant challenges, as a trailblazing female, trailblazing medical resident. Nonetheless, she went on to do such great things, such as in 1964, she co-founded the Olive Tree Medical Group, later known as the ARE Clinic. We'll ask her about that. The first medical facility based on the work of Edgar Cayce. Her dedication to holistic practices led to the establishment of the American Holistic Medical Association in 1978, which significantly advanced integrative medicine in the U.S. and so forth. And so Dr. McGarey's influential books, by the way, such as Born to Live and now her most recent, The Well-Lived Life, encapsulate her holistic philosophy, which she distills into her 5 L's: life, love, laughter, labor, and listening. She believes that all healing comes from within ourselves and that love is the essence of healing, which I'm going to ask her about this incredible idea that maybe some of us are aware of, but maybe many of us are not. So these are, principles that guide her approach to both medicine and life. And even at 103, Dr. McGarey continues to inspire through her writing, her consulting, her public speaking, her lifelong commitment to holistic health, and her remarkable journey from meeting Gandhi, that's right, as a child, to teaching safer birthing practices in Afghanistan. This reflects her enduring spirit and passion for healing. And I just can't say it any more than this, but just to welcome Dr. Gladys McGarey. Dr. Gladys, my goodness, thank you so much for this privilege.
I'm very blessed to be able to, when I was a kid, there was no telephone. So for us to be able to sit here and talk like this and it's going around the world, it's awesome. Absolutely awesome.
It's pretty amazing. And just, just speaking along that lines, what the internet has opened up. And, I take it from one perspective, from the era that I lived in, but I can only imagine for someone who has seen so much progress in life, for you to be sitting there speaking to me by, I remember back in the Star Trek days where they would have the little thing and talk to each other. Yeah, the watches. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. That's impossible, and here we are. Well, let me just ask a sort of a crazy question. What's it like to live for 103 years?
Well, you live every day,
Yeah.
and every day is an opportunity to live another day. And if you forget to live a day, you're stuck.
How interesting.
So I can't answer your question. I have to live the day by day. And in doing that, it gets very exciting.
Which is a beautiful thing to hear, because, and I want to ask you this later on about, one of the topics that I've been reading about and just seeing things, different articles and videos about the notion of, you know, of, just life, in fact, I will just go ahead and ask right now, Dr. Gladys, what is the purpose of living? If I may ask, what?
We each are here for a purpose. It's like a huge jigsaw puzzle. There isn't anybody else that can fit in the spot that we're in. So that one piece and the jigsaw puzzle, if you ever done a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and you get to the end and the last one you can't find, you drive yourself crazy looking for that one. Because it's so important that each puzzle piece finds its own place, because there isn't anybody else that can fit into that place.
Oh, my. And
each one of us have the opportunity of looking for that place. And when we find it, oh, hallelujah, we got it,
I think that's an interesting point of view, that I've had so many conversations with different people, including my relatively young daughters who are 29 and 26, asking the question, what is, them or me or anybody asking the question, what is my purpose in life? And so how do we discover that, Gladys? Where do we go to find that?
You start looking. If you're not looking, you'll never find it. But if you can understand that it's there, it's like my oldest son. He's a retired orthopedic surgeon, okay? When he'd finished his training, he came through Phoenix on his way down to Del Rio, Texas to start his practice. And he said to me, Mom, I'm real scared. I'm going into the world and I'm going to have people's lives in my hands. He said, I don't know if I can handle that. And I said to him, well, Carl, if you think you're the one who does the healing, you have a right to be scared.
Oh, no.
You can understand that your job is to connect with the healing physician within that patient who is the real healer. In other words, you have a whole program of orthopedics that is awesome. If I have broken something or other, I don't want a barber fixing it. I want a good orthopedic surgeon who knows what he's doing, work on that specific, whatever it is. And then I know I can trust that the healing that I will then put into the process will be properly structured and properly worked with. Because if the physician, the orthopedic surgeon, whatever the physician is, can understand that it's their job to, with love, extend what they know to the physician within the patient, then the healing can happen.
Interesting.
It's like I have a real wonderful friend, a psychiatrist around here, and he told me a couple of weeks ago that he works with the medical school, and he was going up to a hospital bedroom where one of his students was waiting for him. And he got there and he said to her, well, we don't need, let's go in. And she says, we don't need to go in. And into the room. She had the chart and all of that. And he said, what do you mean? She said, he has Alzheimer's. He's not going to understand anything.
Oh, my.
And he said to her, now, wait a minute. He says, he's there, and we think with Alzheimer's, he's not going to understand anything. But there's at least one other person in that room, and that's his wife. But there's also the aspect of his own spirit that will take what we're offering him in the way of love and do with it what he can. But his wife may be able to translate what we're saying into that, but it's not our job to judge what he's going to take and what he's not going to take. And besides all that, we've got to touch him.
Physically touch him?
Actually touch him. He said, we'll go in, we'll talk to him, but we'll have to touch him. It's that human touch that is really, really important to the whole process of healing and life and love and living. Because, right now, I can't reach out and touch you, but we're touching each other in the distance. However, the whole process of being able to touch the people that we work with is really important. The human touch is vital.
I don't, please.
Respect that enough.
You what again?
I don't think that we have respected that enough.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I certainly don't understand it from the standpoint that you have just explained it. It's so well said, but I have for many years recognized the idea of the human touch. And I can recall just recently, my father passed a couple years ago, and he was a military guy, I was a military guy. So we didn't really spend a lot of time together. I mean, we were always posted in different places, and he retired, but then I was in the Air Force living overseas. And in any event, my point is we didn't really get to spend a lot of time as adults together. So his last 3 years of his life, he moved here to where I live in Murfreesboro, which is just outside of Nashville. And he was staying at an assisted living place here. And we just started spending a lot more time. And I had made the decision that I was, because we weren't that close growing up in a lot of ways. He was gone a lot because he was in the military, and he was a real tough guy. He was a Green Beret, just didn't have that sort of a loving relationship. He loved me and I loved him. I understood that, but it was just a different type of relation. But all of that to say that I decided that I would just start touching him, on his shoulder or on his arm, or just putting my arm around him. And I did notice almost an instant change in our relationship, Gladys.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have a lovely story like that. We had a family friend, James, and he used to eat dinner at our house, and he was in and out of our house all the time when our kids were growing up. And then he moved into dementia. And so we found a lovely home for him, and he had his own room and all of that. So we did the best we could to have him in a safe and possible place for him, because we couldn't handle him. So anyway, one week, I went over to see him, but I took a little plant. It was a little pot with a little green plant in it. And when I took it in, I showed it to him, and I handed it to him. And I said, now, James, this is your plant. It's going to love you, and I think you'll love it. And I just talked to him like this. And he looks like he's not paying any attention. He doesn't know anything I'm saying. But I'm going on and on and on and on. And so I put the plant in the windowsill and I tell him he should water it and so on and so forth. And then I leave. And I come back a week later and he meets me at the door and he says, magic, magic. And I said, what? He says, look, box. And he takes me over to the air conditioning box. And he says, box, push this button. Plant loves it. Everything's cool. Plant loves it. He push this button. Oh, everything gets hot. Pat doesn't like hot.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, how lovely is that? You know?
My goodness.
Had reached across barriers that I didn't, or I don't know what it was doing, but it was, and with the love that I had given to the whole process, and that someplace in the process he had taken over and he had incorporated, anyway, we had this amazing experience, him being taught by that plant what life and love are about.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, how do you explain those sorts of things?
Oh. It's the attitude with, I was actually reaching out with a lot of love to him.
I see.
I couldn't stay there and do the things that I had done in the past for him. Now this little plant could take that and do whatever this little plant does. I don't know.
I think in terms of biblical scriptures and these sorts of things, and I listen to a lot of perspectives about the Christian, let's just say the Christian life, which is the tradition that I follow. And, people talk about, try to interpret God, who God is, who God is to us, how we should interact with him. And when I listened to many of your podcasts and read excerpts from your book, you talk a lot about love. And that you even talk about, love is the term that you used, is that it says that all healing comes from inside ourselves and all healing is based on love.
Yeah.
And would it be fair to say that God is love?
Oh, absolutely. The little hymn, the children's hymn,
Which one?
God is love. Let me tell you a lovely story.
Please.
I have a great grandson, John's grandson. Okay. Now, John's a retired Presbyterian minister, but now this is his grandson, and he's 5 years old, and he's living in Pennsylvania. And he was with two other kids who were that age, and they were in the process of doing a project with their Sunday school class of sending money, some kind of money, to someplace where people didn't have a well and they needed to dig a well. So these three little people, 5 years old, are standing around a dish and they're putting their nickels and dimes and whatever into this little dish. And the little girl says, after they were done, she says, "Should we pray?" And the little boy that was standing next to her says, "I don't know." But Ian, my great-grandson, says, "Of course we should pray." He says, "God's all around us. Now, let us pray."
5 years old?
5 years old. Now, it's that kind of reality.
Yeah.
How can you tell a 5-year-old that God doesn't exist when he knows God's all around him? It's that kind of acceptance of what love can do in the process of teaching this whole thing.
Why don't we love more, Gladys? Well, I can even speak for myself. I'm a person who's conscientious of love. I'm conscientious of God. I'm conscientious of what Jesus Christ came and did. I'm conscientious of kindness and all those other sorts of things. But sometimes I just turn my head from love because I'm mad at somebody or whatever. I mean, why don't we as a society love more when we understand the power of love? Or maybe we don't understand it.
Well, I have what I call 5 L's that has helped me sort of structure the concept of love.
Oh, man.
The first 2 L's are love and life. They're one unit. It's like in a pregnancy. The mother and that baby, until that baby takes its first breath, are one unit. What she eats, the baby eats. What she thinks, the baby thinks. I mean, it's a structure the way it is supposed to be, that love and life are together. They have to move together. They're one unit. They become separate units when that baby takes its first breath. The mother becomes her unit, and the baby takes its first breath and becomes its own unit. So life and love, though, start out together. They have to move together. They work together. They are a constant moving process.
Yes, I see.
The third, so those two have that essence of needing each other, in one way or another. The third L is laughter. Laughter without love is cold. It's cruel. It breaks up families. It causes wars. But laughter with love is happiness and joy. The fourth one is labor. Oh, man, too many diapers. I have to go to work. Life is too hard. And we drag ourselves through the next day and the next day and the next day. But labor with love is bliss. It's why you're doing what you're doing. It's what I'm doing, what I'm doing. It actually takes the process, and because we are living it with love, it becomes the very thing that makes us pick up that puzzle piece and say, yeah, here, it fits here. So that we have some understanding of how this process is going on. So that's the fourth one. No, drudgery. Yeah, okay. No, I said laughter and then drudgery. And then the fifth one is listening. Listening without love is empty sound. It's a clanging gong. But listening with love is understanding.
Oh, my.
These 5 L's for me help me to sort of put some structure on the word love so that I can begin to think of it in certain ways. Just like when I was working with helping mothers birth their babies and so on. I swear, when that baby took its first breath, I heard the angels sing. Nobody can tell me I didn't hear the angels sing. I heard what I heard, and I know what it was. It was the reclaiming of that life, love aspect of who they were. And now here I am. It's that kind of a reality with life. And life every day, every moment allows us to move forward or backward or wherever we want to go. But it's that reality that life has to move and love have to move. Love has to be a living, working, moving aspect. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
The late Stephen Covey, he used to, I remember when I heard him say this, it really did change the way that I thought about a lot of things, but perhaps most importantly towards my wife and my relationship with her. And that was, he said, I don't know if he coined this or not, but he said essentially that, there are two types of love. One is love the noun, how you feel. He said, without saying it's selfish, it is a little bit more of a selfish love. It's how you feel. He said, but then the truer love, I guess you could say, is the verb. It's how you behave towards others. It's active, and that's kind of what I hear you saying is that, love is everywhere and you have to invoke it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
It's a tricky thing, because Gladys, sometimes I think it's a tricky thing. So I'm not trying to turn this into a religious conversation, although you should tell John that we go to a Presbyterian church. Um, uh, and so we know his kind. But but so if I may just say, so Jesus commands us to love, right? He says,
Right.
love yourself and to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbors as yourself. But how do we do that sometimes? Let's just say in the face of evil, recently, I mean, we hear about all these really horrendous things that going on, or about terrorists. There are enemies and all those sorts of things. How do you love in that way?
Let me tell you my story, okay? When I was in first grade, I repeated first grade twice because I'm that dyslexic.
Oh my!
I all kinds of. I couldn't read because the numbers and everything were all over the page, and so I was a class dummy for 2 years. It was my teacher accepted me as a class dummy. The students did too. I was the stupid one, and all of that. So I had 2 years of accepting that as my role in the world. Not at home. At home, it was completely different. I mean, my mother and my family understood who I was and what I was, but school was different. I mean, that out in the world, I was a stupid one. But the next year, the teacher didn't see that in me. She saw something else, and she appointed me. She appointed me as class governor, and at one point, we were doing a play. And since I was the tallest one in the class, since I'd flunked a year, the play was The Frog Jumped Over the Pond. And that play, we were to, as a third grade class, we were to take to the whole student body. So I could jump over the pond because I was the one who could do that. And I was really confident about this. And my mother made me a frog suit and dyed it green and all of this. And so I marched out onto that platform, and I was really sure I could handle this. But as I walked onto the platform, in the first row of the audience, my two older brothers were sitting there. But it threw me off my step just enough so that instead of jumping over the pond, I landed in it. So now here I'm standing, 8 years old, completely broken. My suit is fading because my mother had used poor dye, and I'm crying and I can't move and I'm stuck, and the audience is hysterical. They are just laughing. Everybody in the audience, they're just laughing and laughing. finally the teacher comes and drags me off the stage, and so that part is over. But we come home, and my brothers are at the dinner table telling my mother this whole story, and she's listening to it. And finally she says, "All right, boys, you've had your fun. Now, how can we as a family help Gladys so that if this ever happens to her again, she'll be able to have people laughing with her, not."
Oh my.
And whatever it was that the family did has stood me in good stead, because time after time, I'm still dyslexic. I mean, come on, that's not, it's like brown eyes. Some things you just have. So time after time, I kind of trip when I'm getting up on a platform, or I do something, but I can always find something like, "Oh, I'm such a drama queen," or something like that. I immediately have the audience in my hand, and things go on. So what my mother had our family do at that point really gave me some tools that the whole world out there had never.
Wow.
They would never be able to do. I think the importance of each individual in relationship to other individuals, particularly when it's a loving family relationship, is vital. If I hadn't had the mother and the family that I had, my brothers and sisters, we were a unit, and we grew up in the jungles of North India and went to school and Woodstock School up in the Himalayas and all, but it was a wonderful way to grow up. But it was a way in which I was able to use the so-called defects in my whole time on this earth in a way that is helpful. And I was 93 before I really began accepting my voice. Yeah.
How do you mean that?
Well, it was a dream. I would write a book, but I'd ask my husband or somebody else to really check it, make sure I hadn't made any mistakes. I kept rechecking and having someone else look at what I had done and so on.
Proofreading it and all that kind of thing
Yeah, all of that, because I didn't trust my own voice.
Yeah, I see.
In fact, I have written 5 medical books, but none of them could say what I wanted to say, which is what I've written in this last book.
Yeah.
The heart of what practicing medicine is. Well, anyway, one time when I was 93, I had a dream. And in the dream, I woke, because through the years I've paid attention to my dreams. They've been really important to me. So I woke up laughing and singing hymns. And I thought, and then I looked into the dream that I was in the process of having. And that was, I saw myself as 9-year-old Gladys coming out of the tent in the jungle and pulling the tent flap back so that my younger brother wouldn't catch me doing what I was going to do, because I knew I'd be in trouble. And he wasn't anywhere around. But in our family on the Sabbath morning, we weren't allowed to sing anything but hymns and bhajans, which are Indian hymns. And I thought as a 9-year-old that was stupid. And I didn't want to be in trouble for what I was going to happen.
Oh my gosh.
So Nobody was there. The Indian kids weren't around. Incidentally, the Indian kids used to rub my arms to try and get the white off.
No kidding.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. So anyway, nobody was around. And I ran as fast as I could to the mango tree and climbed clear up to the top. And I'm sitting up at the top and I'm singing. I mean, I'm singing any old thing that comes into my head, caterpillar song or whatever. And it's just, I'm just having a great time. But then I looked over my shoulder and Jesus was up in the tree with me. This is my dream. And he's laughing like crazy. He's just really laughing. And I say to him, Jesus loves the little children, right? And Jesus says, yes. So I go back to my singing. And then I think, did he really say yes? So I go back to and I say, I'm still a little children, right? And he said, yes. So I go back to my singing, and that's when I woke up. And I realized that I said to myself, well, for crying out loud, if Jesus could accept, maybe you can accept yourself. And I was 93 at the time.
Wow.
After that, I stopped asking people to check.
Wow.
Because I really began to understand that that I had a message and I'd better use it and do with it as it needs to be done.
You know, that's fascinating, and it really it's almost, in a way, believe it or not, almost inspiring that this all took place at 93, because I think that, you know, many of us, as we get older, we start to believe that we should know everything. And really, you know, for God, for you to come to this understanding at 93 really kind of inspires me, because I mean, it's not that I think I know everything, but you know, God does things in his own time, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Including you know, providing you with understanding or wisdom or insight into some particular thing. So Gladys, let me back up just a little bit. I want to not kind of walk through your life, but ask you maybe different aspects of your life, but mostly from the standpoint of how they informed you in your later life, and even today, how they inform you. So you grew up a fair amount of time in India, as you said, in the jungles. What, you know, you know, how does that impact or influence or teach you, you know, inform you in your later life and in your life today, I guess is the question.
Yeah. My parents were both osteopaths. My mother had her license in 1913. And when they went out to India, she went out as part of my dad's luggage, because women were, you know,
yeah.
The way it was. And but she was an osteopath and my dad was an osteopath. And I knew when I was 2 years old that I was a doctor, and so nobody told me differently. And my sister wouldn't let me play with her dolls because my dolls got sick, and then if and her dolls didn't get sick, and
yeah,
you know, all this kind of stuff. But right from the start, I came in knowing I had this work to do. But the fact that we were in the jungles was part of the work that my parents did, because I watched them work with these people who had no one else to come to them with healing in the way that my parents were doing it. Because my mother would pick up a baby who was just grungy and so on. She didn't try to clean that baby up. She took care of that baby the way that baby was, and was able to deal with whatever it was that came along. Or the same thing with the mothers. And And it was I used to watch them, both of them, pull people's teeth because people got bad teeth and there was no one to pull them up. They sat the person down between their knees and reached in with their force, get the sun in the right place, and reach in with their forceps and pull a person's teeth. I mean, my mother called it make do, when you're faced with something, you just make do. And so I watched them do all kinds of amazing work. They didn't have any equipment. They didn't have any x-rays. They had bandages, and they had quinine for malaria and, things like that. But what they had was a message of love, and that they cared enough for these people that they would, be right there with them and work with them. My mother would go into the zananas, which is a closed compartment of the Indian woman, where there were a lot of. But we could go in, my sister and I could go in with her, and we could spend time, It was an amazing ability to see how amazingly life flows in wherever it is.
I understand that you met Gandhi also when you were a child.
Yeah.
And do you remember that? Can you tell us about him, or how it may have impacted you and so forth?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was 10 years old and on the train, and we were going to America. Now, my parents, every 6.5 years, had a furlough when they came back to to America, and they could spend time with their families for 1.5 years, and then they went back to India. But they were so I had heard about America, and I was scared of America. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't want to go. And so I was in the train, and I was angry, and I was going to America, and it was a big, scary place that I didn't know anything about. And but so I'm at the window of the train as it pulls into a
station or whatever.
Yeah. And there was a whole crowd there, but there were always crowds around in India. But this crowd was different, because in front of this crowd, there was a small man in a white dhoti, a staff, and people behind him were chanting Gandhi Ji, and going along. And he came walking along with this huge crowd. In India, there are always huge crowds, but there was this huge crowd behind him. And he came right in front of, not in front of my window, but in line with my eyes where I was looking. And a little girl was reaching up to him with a flower. And he reached down to take that flower from the little girl, and he looked up and he looked into my eyes.
My goodness gracious.
And I connected with him, and I didn't know what it was. I cannot not explain it to anybody, except that something happened, and he connected with me, and I connected with him. And he knew it, and I knew it as a 10-year-old. But 30 years later, when India was going to its horrible partition of the Hindus killing the Mohammedans and so on, it was a terrible, terrible time. My parents worked with Gandhi in helping to heal that whole thing.
Oh, my.
And I think that it was that, I know that my connection had something to do with it. I don't know. I'll never know.
Just had this, this.
With being able to have them know the same things that Gandhi knew and work with them because they were on the lecture platform with them, and they
Wow.
they set up tents for their healing thing and so on, So they were doing their work, and as a thank you, Gandhi gave my mother a beautiful cashmere shawl, which I have upstairs, and my dad a panipat blanket. So it's that kind of a family thing that kind of flows with the life of
Yeah.
we're living.
So, Gladys, I think most people have a general idea, but how do you define holistic medicine?
Well, when we started the American Holistic Medical Association, it took us 2 years to find out how we were going to spell holistic because we were looking for a word that had health and healing and holy as
Oh,
part of
my.
what we were talking about. In other words, we were looking for some way of spelling holistic so that we could incorporate the actual healing process, which was love and living. And we knew it because those of us who were doing this were in that mindset. There were a whole group of us, physicians, who were looking for something besides a war against disease and pain.
I
And to
see.
this day, that's what medicine is. It's a war against disease and pain. And I don't think it's what it needs to be. I think we need to understand disease and pain, not try to kill it. I mean,
Hmm.
so why?
Why? Yeah.
Everything has a lesson.
Hmm.
And what's the lesson that this disease is teaching us? And that's what holistic medicine means.
Wow. And so, um, now, honestly, for me, it seems I know it's been around for many, many years, but it seems like, holistic practitioners and doctors have been coming out more and more in recent years. And so, how do these two things work together? Western type medicine versus holistic medicine. How do they get integrated? I guess you could say. How do they integrate themselves?
Well, I got called in before the medical board repeatedly, and because I was doing things like asking my patients to use castor oil packs and one thing and another, and the rest of the community, the medical community, didn't approve of that. So this one time, one time I was called in front again, and they reprimanded me for what I was doing, and I
Hmm.
accepted the reprimand, and I'm leaving. And as I'm leaving, one of the doctors came up behind me, and he taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "Now let me tell you, honey." Oh, he pushed a button in me,
Ooh.
and I turned around, and I had my keys in my hand. I mean, I just and and I said, "You will not call me honey. I'm your peer, age-wise and professionally, and you will not call me honey." Well, he's just backing down. My lawyer's leaning against the wall, laughing. I came to my office and told my daughter, who was my partner in medicine. She said, "Mom, he didn't." And but it was there were times when we just had to stand up for ourselves. I mean, I had accepted the reprimand. I said, okay. And then this guy comes up and calls me honey.
Well, and hopefully that's happening a lot less these days.
Yeah.
But, you know, back then, of course, there were different attitudes towards and about men and towards and about women. And, you know, it took people like you, I think, you know, who understood the necessity to treat you and respect you like a peer, as opposed to, you know, whatever his intent was. And I think some of these things didn't have malintent, but
No,
they needed to hear from you.
they didn't know any better. I mean,
Right.
he didn't know any better than to do that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really hurt him with my punch, but you know,
Got his attention, I'm sure.
he got the message.
He got the message, you know. Wow. And
And you
so,
know, and actually, when I was in medical school, I was sent to the psychiatrist 3 different times because the dean of the school, Women's Medical College, didn't think I had the right attitude. So
oh
I
my,
go to the psychiatrist and he'd send me back and with a note to the teacher to pay attention, or the dean to pay attention or something. I don't know. But it was a time when the things that I was raised with, the attitude about healing was something that I knew worked. I'd seen it work. I'd felt it with it in my own body, but I knew that this was the kind of healing I was looking for. And I was looking for help in recreating that sort of a process.
I see. And so again, you being at the forefront of developing this whole concept of holistic medicine, your goal was to take the traditional type of medicine, you know, which, I mean, we're talking about when though? When did this happen, Gladys? This was back in what? Um, gosh, I was trying to remember. The 40s?
No, no, we came here in the 50s, the 60s,
Yeah.
70s,
Okay. And
80s, you know.
and so your goal in integrating holistic type medicine into more of the Western style medicine, which what is, you know, prescribing and medication and surgeries and whatever it is, maybe as you said, the war, sort of a war on a disease
Pain.
and pain. And so ultimately your goal was what? To bring love into the picture?
Well, it's like I told my son, the orthopedic surgeon, that it was his job to connect with the physician within the patient who does the real healing. But it's his job to do the work that he's trained to do.
I see.
You know, the orthopedics is so important, and to know how to do it is so vital. But you know, it's not the like my son was afraid. Well, when he came, I think I'd said this, maybe no. He came through Phoenix, going down to Del Rio, Texas, to start his practice, and he said, "Mom, I'm scared because I'm going to have people's lives in my hands."
Yeah.
And I told him, if the patient has their own life in their hand, because the physician within them is the one who will take the work that you're talking about and working with and be able to make it work.
But most people, I would say, didn't understand this concept, you know, of the physician within. So then, how, in practical terms, would one do that? You know, so he's orthopedic, and let's say somebody breaks their leg, and then he resets the bone, right? And then tells them what, so that the healer within can come out.
Well, he can't tell them anything specifically. It's the way in which he does it.
Oh,
He does it with love and caring. That aspect of the work that he's doing is what's going to be
I
getting
see.
the message across to the patient at the level at which the healing can take place.
So if one was to practice in today's time, self-healing, if you will, then you do that through self-love?
Oh, sure, you can do that with self-love. In fact, but it's not. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to understand what's going on within our own being. See, I have this idea. This isn't a theology. It's not a doctrine. It's not anything. When God created the earth, it was beautiful. Everything was perfect. Nothing was out of line. Everything was the way it was supposed to be. And then God, whatever God means to each one of us, created the human being. And he said to us as human beings, now, here's the earth. Everything is perfect. Everything is in place. Now I have created you as the only living beings on this earth that have free will and choice. So I give you dominion over the whole earth. And we, in our arrogance, thought he said dominance. So we said, we got it, and look at what we've done. When dominion means taking care of.
Yeah, I see.
And so I think that we are, so many people that I'm talking to now are reaching for their true humanity because it's been kind of misinterpreted and misjudged when our job was to take care of the earth. And we thought, aha,
yeah,
we can do this.
Right. Right. Wow. Yeah. And so I think as you suggest that it is in the early scriptures in the Bible, that, God gave us humans, like no other species on this planet, the ability to be self-aware, to think, to make decisions, to make choices. And and of course the idea of Adam and Eve, being deceived by the devil, made a bad choice. And from that point on, each of us are in a position now to make good choices or bad choices. We have the will to do that, correct?
Yeah, we have, yes, it's our given human right to make choices. So let's not blame other people.
Well, yeah, and that's it seems like there's a lot of that goes on these days,
Oh, yeah. It always has,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gladys, what I want to shift just a second here for, because I've in perhaps because of the age that I am, which is 65, I've talked to a lot of different people now about about living out their life gracefully. I think there are so many people caught up in this idea about what their life ought to look like, or they are not happy with getting older, all of these things for reasons I can understand. But I'd love to hear from somebody like you who has really, first of all, I guess you could say defied the odds, but you have also living, even in your, as we say, in your senior years, you've been, not just vibrant, but you have the ability to perceive and watch your life as it's gone along. And so I guess my question is what can you tell to other people who are getting older and,
Yeah, I know.
I, I don't know what the question is.
Yeah, I call it aging into health instead of just the uh, ancient or whatever this aging thing is. I
Yeah.
think we can age into health because, my eyesight is gone. I'm legally blind, but my insight is better.
Yeah.
There's a way in which you can take what's actually working for for us and the parts that are working. I have to walk with a walker. His name is Skywalker,
Scott.
and he and I go round and round this little house, and we take our steps and we move and we do what we have to do. But my mother called it make do. You get what you have and you do what you can do with it, and you make do.
Wow. And so what would you advise people again who are getting older in their life about what their frame of mind ought to be like? Some
Look
people
for what,
just go
yeah,
ahead.
look for what you can do.
Wow.
What is
Yeah.
it that you can do? I mean, everybody has a special place.
Yeah.
And there are things, maybe you have a granddaughter that is uh, there, just needs to have some help. Maybe there's a neighbor, maybe there's a plant outside. Start looking for the things that you can uh, have in your life, which allows you to. It's like I was sitting in my chair a couple months ago, and my great granddaughter, who's 5 years old, was walking around my living room and so on. And all of a sudden, I felt little tiny fingers running up the back of my neck. It was the most amazing
Oh my.
of somebody. She doesn't need to say anything. She doesn't know that I was responding to her or whatever, but she wanted to really feel me.
Wow.
It
That's
was a
beautiful.
really sweet thing. But you start looking for things like
Yeah.
that, you
That is
know?
step one, isn't it? To start to open your eyes and
Yes.
start asking the questions, what can I do with my life? What can I do to help others? You know,
Yeah. And if you're not going to look for the light, you're going to be looking for the darkness.
yeah.
And if the darkness is over your shoulder and you're looking for the darkness all the time, you're going to get a stiff neck and you're not going to be able to bring your head back, you know.
To look for anything. That's right. Yeah. Well, can you just, in a closing few minutes here, Gladys, can you tell us more about your book and maybe what do you believe is the most important thing that people should get out of it or you would like them to get out
Oh,
of it?
well, the life and love is the central message. Everything that is done in life with love is part of the healing process.
Yeah.
And so medical work that is done with love and understanding as best as we can understand it is the healing process. It's not, in fact, I was talking to one of the people who runs a big hospital here a while back, and he was saying, how are we going to incorporate these different healing modalities on our hospital staff? And I said, well, the only way you can really incorporate them is by incorporating love with what you're doing, because it's not the modality, it's the way in which it's presented. It's the way in which the person who is reaching to the patient, the physician, the nurse, whoever, if they're reaching with love, there's healing going on. And the importance of integrating that whole loving process into the healing world is what's needed to be done. We've sort of forgotten what love
Yeah.
is and talked about it in all kinds of crazy ways. But the loving life process
Wow.
is what.
No, I get what you're saying. It's so beautiful. I will say that in my work as a coach, I'm a personal development coach, this, that, and the other. And so I work with leaders and so forth. And every now and then I'll get a leader that they want me to coach them. And I say, what would you like to achieve here? What is your goal? They say, well, I want to be a better leader. And one of the things that I want to do is learn how, and listen to what I'm saying here, learn how to be more compassionate. And I say to myself, how do you teach somebody to be more compassionate? How do you actually teach somebody? And so the same thought comes into my mind as I'm listening to you talk about it's not the modality, it's the love that you put into what you know. Well, Gladys, how do you teach somebody to do that?
Well, you you talk to them about it, and then you're what you're doing is showing them how to do it. I mean, because it's a hard, if they can't understand by what you're reaching out to them, they may not be able to get it right now. But if you plant the essence of what it is that you're reaching to them with, sooner or later, they'll find some way in which they can understand it because they start looking for it. I think that's what we have to do. Start looking for the light.
Mm.
Turn away from the darkness and reach for the light.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and it's like if I have a good flashlight, okay, and I'm walking down my path and I can see a foot ahead. If I'm walking down there and I can look over to the side and there's a little glimmering light over, look hard. If I take my light and shine it on that light, everything gets brighter.
Yeah.
It's a matter of taking
Yeah.
what we've found with love works and share it with the people and watch it work with them.
And so maybe, for those, because there are people that would fall on a large spectrum of, those who for whatever reason, whether you call it nature or nurture, grew up and have this sort of innate ability to love someone.
Yeah.
And then, Gladys, there are those who just they don't seem to have that, but they're a doctor. They're more of a right left brain analytical, type person. And somehow they have to, well, I guess, you know, the first thing is to be self-aware, right?
Yeah.
That you may not sort of feel this love in your feelings, but that you can still give the love by
And sometimes there's a person who really is not a nice person
right,
who's in your environment, okay?
right.
And sometimes they're hard to love. They're hard to even
Ah, good point.
incorporate into your community because,
Yeah.
but if you can find some little thing like, ooh, look at that plant he grew, or uh, my, what beautiful shirt he's wearing. I mean, try to
Mm.
find something that you can connect with him for, or just don't say anything, but think that. Because if you can't put it into words, at least you can put it into action.
Yes. Yes. No, that's a good point. Well, listen, I mean, I could just talk to you forever. There's there's a million questions that I have for you. But, Gladys, can you tell the people out there where they can find your book and where they can find out more about you and your
John,
amazing life?
oh, he's
GladysMcGarey.com.
GladysMcGarey.com.
yeah.
Okay. And they can find, and
I
I,
echo.
that's, say again,
I echo.
your echo. Yeah. Your echo has a different tone to its voice. No. Um, well, listen, I just appreciate you so much. And, I talk about this idea sometimes of, what believe people should do as they mature in life. I talk about the cattail. You're familiar with the cattail, right? And the plant, if you will, and it grows along waterways often. And they say, I know it's true, I've looked at it, is that when the cattail matures, it explodes, if you will. And it explodes and the wind catches it and spreads its seeds everywhere. And I try to tell people that when you're in a senior position, and that doesn't have to be 103 years old or 65 years old, you could be, 40 years old and sort of the wiser one within your organization. But the idea is that when you get to a certain level of maturity in life or in what you're doing, that you should be like a cattail and explode and spread your seeds everywhere, spread your
Right.
wisdom and your insight. And you have done that, Dr. Gladys, in spades. I mean, you have just given so much to the world, and still there's a lot more world who needs to hear you.
Well, the books that I wrote before were about medicine, about healing, but they didn't have the essence of it.
Yeah.
So this new book that's out now has the essence of what the healing's all about.
The well-lived life. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time and being so gracious and with your time.
Thank you for having me.
No, the pleasure is completely mine, and tell your other half there, thank you for getting us connected.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. God bless you.
You too.
Thank you. Gladys, before you go, so that's the end of it. I have a quick question for you if you just have one more minute. This is not part of the interview.
Okay.
So I have a German friend in Germany. When I was stationed out there in the 80s, I became a part of a band that he had. It was a German, kind of a pop band, did rock and R&B. And so we became good friends. He was a songwriter, prolific songwriter, and he and I wrote music together and so, thankfully, with Facebook and others, we stayed in touch and we stayed very, very close. And I've gone out to Germany and seen him a few times. Well, a couple of years ago, Gladys, he had a stroke and then he had a heart attack and then he had cancer. And here, 2 years later, he is now in a nursing home. That's fairly recent that this has happened within the last 6 months. And he had another stroke and like several other heart attacks. I mean, the life that he's living right now is incomprehensible. I did go out there a few weeks ago to visit him because I figured he's at the end of his life. He was in such bad shape. And so he's in a wheelchair. He's in a nursing home where so many of the other people living there are completely out of it. And here you have a man who is physically incredibly broken. He could only use his right hand. Well, he just recently had another stroke and now he can't use his right hand. His eyesight has gotten really bad. And I guess what I want to ask you, and maybe there is no answer to this, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I don't know what to say to him. I don't know what to do for him. He is in such a difficult spot right now.
Can you sing?
I can.
Why don't you sing to him?
Oh my gosh. That never occurred to me. That never, ever occurred to me.
You might allow him to even come up with a new song.
touch him.
What? Yeah, and touch him. Be sure you touch him.
Well, when I was out there in Germany, because he's in Frankfurt, Germany, I did, and he is, he- I can't even imagine his state of mind right now that even just a year ago, 2 years ago, he was flourishing and writing beautiful music, and now he's just flat on his back and can do nothing. And I think maybe you're right.
But he could listen to his own songs.
He can listen to his own songs.
He wrote them.
He wrote them.
And he wants to hear them.
Yeah.
It's that seed that is scattered from the seed pod.
I want to talk to him more about God, but I almost don't know how to do it. It almost seems unfair to talk to him about that in his state where he would just go.
You don't need to talk to him. Just do it. Just
Okay.
sing.
Okay. This is amazing. That's never crossed my mind.
Yeah. And it might help all the other people in the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I love to sing, but I don't have a good voice. But I decided a while back I'm going to sing anyway.
Are you singing now?
Huh?
Do you still sing?
Well, yeah.
Well, sing something to me.
Okay, let's see. Let's see.
Anything.
All right. Well, now this is my dad used to sing this to wake us in the morning. It's Indian. Uth musafir kar tayari, ab to kuch din bhi nahi hai. Kya amiri, kya fakiri, maut ko parwah nahi hai. मौत को परवाह नहीं है उठ मुसाफिर कर तैयारी अब तो कुछ दिन भी नहीं है. Now my dad used to, when we were in camp, he would waken us with that, and it's basically saying, get up, fare, it's daylight is passing. You have to catch the daylight. A death doesn't care whether you're a fakir, a holy man, or whether you're the whole song is all about that. And
wow.
I don't know why that came into my
Oh,
mind.
it's so beautiful, though. It's about basically wake up and don't let the day pass you by, right?
Yeah, don't let it get up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
cut us up every morning.
I'm curious about something. Is John still nearby?
Yes.
And you said he was a pastor, right? For many, many years. How long were you a pastor, John?
43 years.
Oh, well, just a couple of years. May I ask him something, Gladys?
Yes.
So, John, here's my question for you. What did Jesus mean? What did he actually mean when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man goes to God but through me? What did he actually mean by that?
Well, you have to put it in context. So that's something I can't answer in one sentence.
Okay.
Well, Jesus is love. Yeah. So God is love. What more do you want?
I've often wondered this, and I don't say this out loud because I don't want to be blasphemous,
Yeah.
but I've often asked myself, I wonder if Jesus meant the following, that love is the way, the truth, and the life, and no man goes to God but through love.
Love. That's right. And Jesus was the epitome of love. He came to bring, he had to become flesh and dwell among us so that we knew what love could work like.
Well, I couldn't do better, so there you go.
I'm sorry, John.
No, that's good.
Well, I'm thinking about starting another podcast, and it's going to be a bit of play on words, and maybe you would appear, John, on my podcast, but I'm going to call it my Shaky Faith podcast. And again, kind of a play on words, but the purpose of it is to ask questions like that one, and to help people, I think, answer some of the questions that hold us back from having a stronger faith. I used to run a Sunday school class for about 10 or 12 years or something. And I remember asking the group, and it wasn't really a traditional class. It was really, it was scripturally based, but I came with a question to ask the group, and we would talk about the question. So it was really more about how you live your life according to God and scriptures and understanding things. And I remember I asked the group around them about their faith, their level of faith. And I asked them how it would change if Jesus suddenly appeared in this room. And I'm not saying just walked in from outside, but literally appeared, so that it was understood by everybody sitting in the room that this was a supernatural appearance of Jesus. And he had a moment to speak with us about our life and about God, and how, if that happened to us, how would that change the way that we thought about our spirituality and how we would live our lives. And I submit that I ask that question because I submit that many of us, I should say, don't behave in a way that we really believe in Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. The other thing is you could ask your group, what question would you ask Jesus?
John, let me take it here. He was 7 years old, and he came into the living room, and he says, "I wish Jesus was here." And I said, "Well, I do too, but why you?" He says, "Because I've got questions." And I said, "Well, try me, maybe I can help you." He says, "But you don't have the answers."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, try me." So he says, "Okay, how can God be if he never got started?" And I said, "Oh."
That's deep.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's like a circle. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. He says, "I knew you didn't have the answers." Well, see, so he's still, this is,
So that was 7 years old.
Yeah.
Now he's 76. So what have you concluded, John?
The answer is 43.
That the answer is 43?
Yeah. That's what the guide, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe says. The answer to everything is 43. So
I don't understand that.
Well, if you've seen that movie.
Which one?
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe.
I don't think so.
Well, it's just one of those little popular with the certain, it has a cult following.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's one of those odd things that, anyway, the answer to everything is 43 in that movie. So
I'll be darned. Okay. So there's the answer right there, 43. Well, listen, thank you again so much, Gladys, for taking the time, and I will let you know when it comes out, should you want to watch it, but in any event, it'll come out in a few weeks on YouTube and Spotify and all the rest that you're very familiar with.
Well,
so
thank you for allowing me to spend this time.
No, it's so beautiful, and I appreciate you so very much. So best to all of you, and I'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.